Hello and welcome to this game review. In this one we will try to learn how to realize huge material advantages. So let's take a look. So e4, e5 and d4. Already this is not a very good move because if black had taken, which is the point by the way of putting the pawn on e5, white will have to recapture, and after knight c6 black will be able to gain the lead in development, which is not a very good sign for white since this is move free. Generally we should be the ones aiming for the lead in development. So in general we should not develop the queen too early without a good reason. So instead black defends, but now we can take, and after black takes back we will get this position, which is slightly better for white because black's king is not going to be able to castle. Instead knight c6, but now black is simply down a pawn. He also has no lead in development, he also has a bad structure, so there's really nothing going here for black. He continues with a5, which doesn't develop pieces either. The bishop goes to a6, but this is only a minor inconvenience. And black continues pushing pawns, and white continues attacking and developing with tempo, which is a good idea. f6, but this already finishes the game because the king is just too weak in the center with no developed pieces. E takes f, g takes f. Now white takes on d5 with check, so white is already 2 pawns up, and also he is attacking the opponent. The bishop moves to f4 and king f7. White takes another pawn. We could take another pawn, but at this point we have to understand that we already have 2 pawns up, and generally 2 pawns are enough to win any endgame, so the pawn count doesn't really matter to us anymore. What we do need is pieces in the game. So for example, knight c3, we can continue queen d2, rook a d1, something similar. The knight can go to d4, to c6 perhaps, maybe the queen to h5, and we should just be aiming to attack the opponent's king, and probably this would end in checkmate. But okay, this is of course fine. Now we get an endgame with 3 pawns up, which should be easily winning. The usual procedure is to exchange as many pieces as possible and to limit counterplay. The second point is especially important. So bishop b4, c3, and rook d7. And here white decides to take another pawn. The engine says it's a blunder because there was some kind of forced checkmate with knight h4, etc., but this is not entirely obvious. But white has to understand the point of the situation, so currently he has 3 pawns as an advantage. So winning a 4th pawn will not really change anything. The position will still be winning, but we will lose a move, and every move counts in chess, and we should use our moves to develop the pieces which are standing in the corner. This should be a good habit to have. So knight bd2, rook e1, maybe even create some kind of luft for the king, to not get back rank checkmated, and the win should come quite easy. Said here, now knight bd2, not getting checkmated. It's as a general rule in such completely winning positions we shouldn't even give the opponent any hope for any counterplay, like rook d1 checkmate. But okay, knight bd2, knight e4, white is fully developed. Now he wins a piece as well, so we have +7 material. After bishop e2, white goes for this check, and now rook takes h7. So this is the first kind of weird moment. Perhaps white was in a panic, but at the moment black's only idea is to attack the knight, take the knight. So we could just defend the knight and then develop the last piece, and then again look at the checks, captures and attacks. Currently we're already actually threatening checkmate on f6. And there's not really much black can do. He can defend, but we can play, for example, h3 with some ideas of g4 after moving the knight, and we should be able to checkmate this game. But even if we don't, we also have this passed pawn on c6, which we could use, and we should in general use all of our pieces. So rook e1 should come with tempo at some point as well. But rook h7 simply takes a pawn which is defended. So white loses some material here, but still the position is completely winning because we just have way too much material. Currently we are, I'm not even sure how many, I think 5 pawns up, which is quite a lot. King g4, And now white plays c7, which is of course not really changing the evaluation, but generally we should try to exchange as many pieces as possible and then promote our pawns. So either white can try to promote the queenside pawns or the kingside pawns. But what white really has to understand is he cannot win if he does not use this rook. So okay, c7, and rook e1 is a nice move, ignoring the threat on the bishop to take the other bishop. This is somewhat of an exchange. Even though this does lose the pawn, it doesn't really matter as we still have 5 pawns, and after knight f6 we are completely winning as we have 3 connected passed pawns. So g3 instead, king f3, and now white plays this move rook e3, giving a check, but this simply overlooks black's forcing moves with the bishop taking on e3, and this is quite an unfortunate ending. Instead, of course, white is winning with rook e6, but actually only rook e6 because the knight is also attacked here, so we already have to be a little bit careful here. And after bishop takes f2, which is possible, we have to go to f1, and if black takes the knight, it's very important that we have this move rook f6, skewering the king and the bishop. So already the position was a little bit dangerous from the point of view of practicality, so there was no real point of allowing the king to go to f3. Instead, maybe just redevelop the knight which is attacked, and the white should be easily winning. But instead, before making any move, we should always create a blunder check, which means imagining the position after our move and try to imagine and ask ourselves, can the opponent capture anything? Can he check anything? If he can, then we should be very wary of that. Not always is this going to be a bad sign that he can take something, but if we do not see it, sometimes stuff like this will happen. And now black is just winning because he is a rook up, and this knight is also hanging. So quite an unfortunate ending, and the best way to avoid stuff like this is to do blunder checks before giving this check. And before every single move, imagine that we have made the move, visualize, and then imagine your opponent's possibilities, checks, captures, and attacks. And after this check, the only capture or attack he can do is to take the rook. So quite unfortunate, and hopefully next time we can do some blunder checks before making the moves.